Hi guys, my name is Poki027 and today I'll be showing you how to create these beautiful stylized trees inside Blender 2.8. So let's get going. So we have created a new Blender file. Now the first thing you want to do is say goodbye to the default cube and enable some things in the preferences. So go under Edit, Preferences, and under Add-ons, which you can select right here, go under, actually you can see it right here, but go under Search and say Tree. Now you have this popping up. For me it's already enabled because obviously I made the trees already, but if it's not enabled for you, enable it and it's automatically gonna be installed for you. Good. Okay, so now what to do is to go under Add, go under Curve and Sapling Tree Gen. Alternatively, you can go to Add, Curve and Sapling Tree Gen. I prefer the shortcuts. Now when you have this created, don't touch anything else. If you do, just delete the tree and you need to create it again. The reason for that is because you have this little menu that will disappear after you make an update in whatever you're doing, and you can't undo it to go back. So be very careful in this. Do not select anything when creating a new tree. Let's explain what this little menu does. So you might want to expand it. It might look like this for you, so expand it and you will have these options: geometry, branch radius, branch splitting, and so on. So we will start with geometry and I will try to explain everything I can as better as I can. So let's first start with this little tick. Bevel. Well, that's pretty much self-explanatory. If you ever worked with curves, you know what bevel means. Basically it adds a circle, hexagon, right? Yeah, it's a hexagon. Okay, good. This is a hexagon, okay. It creates a hexagon if the bevel resolution 1. Basically it creates a circle or these gons all along the curves and meets them at the end, but doesn't close the tips. We have to enable that later if we want to, of course. So bevel pretty much creates all these faces, and right now it's at 0, and this will mean that a lot of your CPU power will be used. Why is origin on? God damn it. Okay, so now let's enable the bevel, because I can do that. It's not gonna really take much processing power for me, and for the purposes of this tutorial, I want you guys to be able to see what's going on. Okay, now let's move on to the bevel resolution. Basically, bevel resolution is how nice will this little guy look. If we put it higher, well, the more, I don't know, like vertices it will have, the more faces it will have, the more edges basically. And if we put it low, it's gonna be, oh, it can even be a square. Never knew that. Okay, but we're gonna make it a hexagon for the purposes of this tutorial, so I have less faces to work with. Then you have the curve resolution. It's basically how curvy this will be, how well will it follow the curve. Make it very curvy. You see how nice it looks, and that really pumped me up to like 250,000 faces. Like, god dang. But basically that's what it does. And we can lower this down to for how it was. Then auto, this handle type is auto, which makes it really nice and curvy. It's actually Bezier. I don't know why is it called auto. I could be wrong, but this is Bezier. Or you can set it to vector. Vector pretty much means it points directly to every single segment. So let's say there's a segment right here and there's a segment right here. Vector will pretty much just point the arrow there, or point in that direction. Let's say there's another segment there. It's gonna look like this. The curve is gonna look like that. But if it's set to auto, for example, the curve will look nice and curved along those points. So I hope that explains it. So that means you have these two places right here, right? And the vector pretty much just points and connects these two segments, these two vertices. While auto really tries to curve it as much as it can. You can really see it here. Actually, you can see it here the most, which is nice. So let's move on to shape. 10th flame. I have a lot of shapes actually. And to be honest, you can just move through these yourself and just see which one works for you, because most of these names are self-explanatory, like, I don't know, conical, it makes a nice cone. Cylindrical, it makes a cylinder, as you can see right here, it's nice and round like this, but it's like a rectangle like this. Hemispherical makes a sphere, like half a sphere. You can just really play with this, do whatever you want. Flame is just like, it's kind of like makes it random, just goes up. And 10 flame is like I like those tender big flames. A small just flame, I believe, it's supposed to resemble like those harsh flames, like coming from, I don't know, like something from a welder or something like that, or like a cutter. Actually, that might make more sense. I don't know if welders actually use flames or arcs. I actually know they use arcs. I'm sorry for swaying off, but I will use custom shape because why the hell not? But you might notice that the custom shape really looks like the 10 flame, just a little bit different, and that's because custom shape is made to look like a 10 flame using these settings. Now to explain these settings, I have no idea, to be honest, because sometimes they just make something different. I don't know. I mean, you can use conical and use these settings, but only some of these settings will work. Let me just see which ones. Nope, none of these will work. So let's go to custom shape. Okay, so let's run through these settings real quick. This, I don't know, I guess it pretty much makes how much the lower branches will exist. This one will make how much overall branches will exist, and this one is how much the upper branches will exist. How much, if that makes sense. Let's put it to 1. And this one is how much the middle ones will exist. I don't know. Like, I really don't know what these settings mean, but it really doesn't matter, and I never really tried to learn it because it just doesn't matter. You just play around with this and you'll find something nice. So let's make something random. Actually, I don't want to make a random tree. I want to make like a hemispherical tree. Oh boy, this is gonna be tough. So make this low, make this kind of high, make this higher, this even higher. That looks kind of like I would want it to. Maybe a little bit more of this. But this really doesn't matter because if I want to have a spherical tree, I can always add that later, and I will talk about it later. So this is secondary. This is pretty much, this is the first branch, right? And secondary is how much every single branch after that branch will look. And you can again play with that, but I'm not gonna. And this is branch distribution. Again, you can play around with these things, really not important to me at least. Since, well, this is mostly a tutorial about the shading. But at least now you know how to make a tree. And then random seed, of course, just a random seed. And branch rings, again, play around with it. Really just adds, it doesn't add more branches, it just places them on different areas of the main branch. Okay, that's too much. Then the tree scale is tree scale. You make it big, the tree is big, you make it small, the tree is small. I'm gonna put it at default. Scale variation is, again, if you're gonna use the seeds and some of these values, it's gonna just pretty much decide. So if it's set to 2, that means it's gonna be 2 times the size of, this. Really just play around with it. The geometry part really doesn't matter except for the shape. And this, if you want extra details, which I don't want. Let's actually move on to something useful here. Branch radius. Again, bevel the branches, you don't have to. The first one was just pretty much all of the tree, as in one whole, and these are just branches. Branch radius. Again, you can play around with this, but it's pretty much self-explanatory. Make it thin. Oh boy, it's thin. Right? Make it like this. It's kind of normal. Make it a little bit thicker. Oh, I made it too thick. Okay. Oh god. The monstrosity. Let's make it 1.5, I guess. Yeah, that's nice. You can really play around with these values, but the ratio is how much will the thickness be multiplied by, then the radius scale, again, just the scale of the main branches and so on, and this will be... Actually, I don't know what's the difference. I actually don't know. Is there a difference in this? Okay, that doesn't matter. Again, this is to play around with. But again, the most important part is this. Ratio and radius scale. The bevel resolution does exactly the same thing as the previous bevel did. That's it. Now we're gonna select close tip because I think that looks fancy. Since this is smooth shaded, it will make the tips appear darker and sort of more natural. So you don't have to do this, but I prefer to do it. auto taper. If you know what taper is, if you ever used the curves, it will make it basically at the beginning it's gonna be thick, and at the end it's gonna be small. So auto taper is exactly the same thing as previous, where we had auto and vector. The normal tapering would pretty much just make it linear, so like this, but the auto taper will do it like this, a nice curve. So you see how this looks so nice actually, but without the auto taper it looks so thin before it even reaches the end. It's because it's doing it linearly, and the overall thickness is already too thin. So select auto taper for the niceness, and then you can tweak all these values. It says this is for the taper and this is for the tweak radius. Actually, I don't think it does anything, so just don't change anything that's not important. But again, this is all for playing and completely subjective. Moving on, branch splitting. Oh god, so many options. This is completely unnecessary. The most important things are just this. This is it. This is what you're gonna play around. Actually, just these two. Base splits. How many primary splits will there be? Make it a lot. You have a lot of primary splits. Make it 3. You have not so much. Levels. How many times will a new branch be created? So let's set this to 2, because I like to. Actually, 3 might be nice. Oh god, I regret. 2. Make it 2. Basically, you have the first branch, then you have the second branch, then you have this branch, then you have this one, and so on. But you see how it mostly creates 2 branches out of these. So there's 1 and there's 2, kind of 2. This one is counted in, but it's more like additive. But if I set 3, now we're gonna see a lot more branches, right? So we have go up. So this is 1, and then we have 1, 3. Or 1, 2, actually. It adds up to 3. Basically, how many branches will there be per a branch, if that makes sense. Base splits, I already explained this, and this is really not that much of a big deal. Just play with this if you want to. It's really not that important. Let's go to branch growth. Again, only this will be used or important. Of course, if you want to get fancy, change these as well. I don't want to get fancy, so I'm gonna change these. Taper crown basically means if it's to 0, that means we don't want to taper it, and it's gonna add, or not add, it's gonna treat the crown of the tree as a flat line. It's gonna just be flat. So you see how they pretty much reach the same height. But if you taper it, taper basically means beveling, I guess. I don't know why it's called actually, tapering kind of means making a cone. Or smoothing it out, and it's gonna smooth it out if we set it to 1. See how it's now nice and smooth. But this is again not that big of a deal for us, because we're gonna be using another method for changing our crown. But I would suggest putting this to 0.5, which is the default value, and moving along to pruning, which is exactly what I'm talking about. And here pretty much everything is important. Let's select prune so we can prune our trees. This is very important for stylized trees. Very important. Because stylized trees are not supposed to look realistic, and they most certainly do not look realistic. They're mostly always pruned. What is pruning? Have you ever seen those bushes that are like nice, like, I don't know, nice shapes? Some of them look like cones, some of them look like squares and stuff like that. Well, they've been pruned, and this is what Blender is trying to recreate. So let's change some things. Oh god. The prune ratio is pretty much how much the prune will be affecting this. I would like to set it to 1, but like set it to a value close to 1. Something like 95, 85, even 75 is okay. Prune width pretty much, it's pretty much self-explanatory. How wide will the prune be? Again, 0.5, but for this, you want to go as close to 0 as possible, but not 0. Something from 0.15 to 0.35. So let me put 0.25. Yeah, a nice tall tree. Actually, you know what? I want to put 0.35. That looks nice. Then the prune base is pretty much how high the the base of this is, and 0.5 is perfectly fine. You can put it from anything from 0.5 to 0. 0 might be the best, to be honest. Oh god, what are you? What are you? Tentacle? I'm actually gonna put you to 0.1. 0.25 because I want this ugly branch to go away. But okay, 0.15, fine. Let's keep this one. Whew. Then prune with peak is pretty much how the peak would be wide, and this is how the cylinder tree is made. And this, I don't know why is it not capped at 1, but pretty much it's capped at 1 in my dreams. So yeah, you can put this to 0 to make extra stylized trees, or put it to 0.15. How I do it every single time for some reason. And prune power is pretty much how strict this is. Oh god, let's put it something like this, which makes sense. It's really rough now. Closer it gets to 0. If it's at 0, it's gonna make like a cylinder again. If it's negative, it's gonna do this, which kind of makes it look like a nice rich tree. But I don't want that, because it kind of beats the purpose of pruning. So let me put 0.25, because that's what defaults do. Okay, and the prune power is, I don't think it says the full thing. Oh, the low, yeah, it says basically how will this little bad boy be. And now it's at 0, so it's again an edge or a 90-degree angle. But if you set this to something curvier, it will make it nice and curved. And this can be set to pretty much any value, even if you want like 1. It's not going to be noticeable unless the prune with peak is set to a little bit higher value. But I'm going to set to 0.5 because it looks kind of neat. No? Looks kind of neat, right? Yeah, like a popsicle. Looks like a popsicle. Okay, let's move on to leaves. Now, here comes the fun part. Just enable this and play around with these settings, but trust me, the defaults are perfectly fine. If you want to make like falling leaves, you have to play with these rotations. And this is the leaf shape. Pardon me. Rectangular is good. Pardon me. And this is the leaf shapes. Rectangular is good for if you're gonna have textures. Hexagonal is good if you're just gonna have materials, which is what we're gonna do. And the leaves is pretty much how much leaves there will be. Leaf distribution is how will it be distributed? Where will be more leaves? Where will be less leaves? Will the tree be balled up, or ridged down, or vice versa? Okay, now that's leaves, and let's go to armature. Now, this is if you want to do animation, if you want to do winds. I don't want to do wind, and I won't do wind. So this is a no for me. So I won't be doing this. And animation is, I don't know, I never used this, but oh, you can actually change or create wind here, I suppose. Don't hold me on that, but I'm not interested in that here. I'm interested in still pictures here. Now that we have created this tree, you can freely click literally anywhere else, and you're free. You're now free. You're officially free, my man. Ah, it feels good, doesn't it? Okay, let's go to shading. And now I could easily just export or append that material from where it was before to here. I'm not going to do so. I'm going to create new ones, and I'm going to walk you through it. Let's create a new material. Let's call this leaves. We're going to be using the principal BSD fee. I almost said a wrong word. Because it's just handy. It has everything we need, and we don't have to create unnecessary shaders when we have just one. Okie dokie. Let's create a texture coordinates. And what will this be doing? Well, let's first go to layout actually, and let's create an empty. This will be our orientation on where the gradient wants to change, and I'll show that in just a second. I'm gonna put it somewhere approximately in the middle, what looks as middle to me. Let's go back to shading, and I believe this is all we'll need. Let's go to leaves, and let's select empty in our object selector, or you can eyedrop it. It's gonna be a little hard because it's an empty object. And let's introduce mapping. This will just pretty much be so we can change some values, so we can rotate the gradient and so on. If you don't know what this does, it's pretty much alters this adds values that are these here. You want to keep this type to point and select the object one to here. And the reason why object is, well, because we're going to be using the object as our reference point. Good, 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 good. We are making progress. Now let's create a gradient texture. And let's plug this vector and this vector and right away into our base. And now you can see that the left, okay, I don't know the orientation. Okay, the left side or the right side of the tree is dark and this is light. So let's go to empty and let's enable the transform. And if we move it around, you can see that when we move the empty, something changes, right? And that's cool, right? We've actually made something useful, and we kind of made our first shader. If this is your first shader, I'm sorry for assuming that. That was stupid of me. Okay, I'll probably cut that out, maybe not. Okay, now this is not what I want. Maybe this is what you want, but this is not what I want. What I want is to pretty much make the trees that I made before or previously. It is to go and have a gradient like this. So go from up to down or down to up. It really doesn't matter because we can always change that using a color ramp. So what we'll do, we'll select the Y rotation and rotate it by 90 degrees. There we go. We have this thing now, right? So cool. And for some reason, or not some reason, I know exactly why, this looks pretty dumb, right? I mean, this is just black and this is just white. I mean, that doesn't look very stylized or anything. Like if we changed to two colors, it would just be too boring. You wouldn't be able to change so much. We want a nice gradient, nice linear gradient all along from down to bottom, from 1 to 0, not from 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and then 0.5 and something, I don't know, to 0, 0, 0. I hope that makes sense. So what we're gonna do is go under the Z component of the scale and make it like 0.1. And now this really made it something. So maybe, you know what, increase it just a little bit. 0.05. Okay, good. And now this really makes much of a difference, actually. It looks a lot better. And then you can move this down to really make this gradient appear. Okay, I like how this looks. Of course, you can change this value for yourself if you don't like it. Maybe to 0.1 if you want. It's really up to you. But now that we have created that, let's create a color ramp. This will pretty much allow us to change the colors as they move on. And you can use as many colors as you want here. Really doesn't matter. I'm gonna use 3 colors and they're gonna be pretty much close to bottom. So that means that the bottom will have the most colors, but the upper part will be the most vivid, kind of the brightest, because it's gonna have the one color represented. So let's change these colors. I'm gonna go for a similar look that I had before, which is, I believe it was pink. I would like to select this. Wait, okay. Pink and like cyan or something. Actually, I'm gonna create some kind of crazy looking tree. And this could be like kind of like orange. Yeah, this looks disgusting, but I like it. Okay, you know what? I'm actually not gonna make it look disgusting. I'm gonna make it look nice as much as I can. So there you go. You have your nice looking trees. I mean leaves, and they don't look that bad, right? And you can change these options if you wanna change how the colors shift. But I'm gonna keep it at linear, just because I think that looks actually quite okay. Then for the leaves, I'm gonna turn up the subsurface just a little bit, because I think it looks neat. And it's gonna enable some like diffusing of the light that passes through them. Okie dokie, and you can change the subsurface color as well if you want to. Just apply this one, so it looks pretty much the same, but still has that subsurface ability. You don't have to, but I'm gonna do it because it just makes it look so richer of colors, or with colors. And I'm gonna up the metallic to like half, up this as well, and lower the roughness, but not too much. So it's nice and specular, almost like after rain. And I'm also gonna go under clear coat and add some clear coat to it. There you go. Clear coat is basically, it just adds, like literally adds a glossy shader on top of it. That's how I realize it. And then the roughness is just how rough that glossy shader is. Okay, now let's create that glow that you saw, that little middle glow. So we want to copy this gradient texture, but instead of linear, we're gonna use spherical. Let's copy this mapping because we don't want to use the same mapping for this thing. I'm gonna be using a little different something. Let's copy this color ramp and plug it in, plug this gradient into it, and go under emission. Now hold up there, buckaroo, that's a lot of something. Well, first things first, you want to select this orange and set it to black. So basically everything that is not affected by this gradient texture, or everything that is black in this gradient texture, or in even more other words, everything that is outside of something that we want to affect will be dark or not glowing. Good. Now that we have created that, you can see that we have a little bit of a glow. Might be a little bit more visible in the shading viewport or the shaded viewport, and I think it looks quite cool. But there's something, it just doesn't look right? It looks cylindrical, it doesn't look spherical, and it's obviously spherical selected here. The reason for that is because this is obviously not a sphere, this is obviously a cylinder, or like an elongated sphere. Let's replicate that. So let's say we create a sphere and just make the z extremely small. Or in vector's case, it will make the z extremely big. It's gonna look like this. So let's go back and let's just put this to 1. And it should pretty much create this spherical shape, and this can be 0 as well. It's not gonna change anything because it's a sphere. And there you go. Let me just disable this light. And you can see it now, but it's kind of small and it's too low. So let's change that right now. I believe the X component should be, oh, no, wrong. X component should be changed. Okay, no, then the Z. Yeah, the Z. Let's put it somewhere in the middle. Something like this. Yeah, that's pretty okay. Of course, you can just select and create another texture coordinate so it goes from another empty object specifically made for this gradient texture, but I'm not gonna do that here because I can just do this, and I'm pretty satisfied with the gradient the way it is. So yeah, how to make this bigger? You might be thinking, oh, let's just up the scale like this. No, for some reason, I don't know if I can explain it. Maybe I can't, but basically, the smaller this is, the bigger this will be. Got it? Got it. Now let's put it 0.5, 0.5, and 0.5. Now it's much bigger. Maybe a little too big. Maybe too high. Well, yeah. Let's leave the Z. Actually, let's make the Z smaller, so it's actually bigger. God damn it, I hate vectors. And let's make this smaller. Yeah, I think I like the way that looks. Basically, this is just tweaking now, but I think I explained what each value does. And now if you look at it, it kind of looks boring, right? I mean, you can pretty much see where the sphere is. So how to fix that? Well, I don't know if this is a right or a good fix for you maybe, but for me it was quite decent. Let's create a mix RGB node and connect this ramp to it, and let's select multiply. Let's create a noise texture, and let's just put it here, and there we go. Now just tweak these settings a little bit, make this small, not too small. Make the detail 0 and the roughness, I don't know what the roughness is. That's a new thing. And you can distort it a little bit, scale it as much as you want, and it makes it just look a bit more random. Okay, good. You can of course tweak these values. I don't know, tweak this if you might wanna not multiply it, add it, whatever. Tweak it to your liking. But of course, I don't want this glow to be pinkish. I kind of want it to be maybe like reddish, but like with a soft pink inside, like this. like a baby pink, very bright baby pink, and this kind of like an orangish color, kind of dark, so it's not very visible. And we'll make this nice cardinal. Yes, it's kind of looking good. But again, you might want to change this, and you might most definitely want to use cycles for this, because cycles is just better. And just to make sure nothing crashes, I'm gonna save this and I'm gonna call this tutorial tree. So this is how the node pretty much looks right now. Okay, cool. And that is actually all there is. Now for the tree bark, you can add just like a diffused or just a principled air diffused mixed with glossy, something like that. It's pretty much up to you. And yeah, this is the tutorial now to create a tree, a stylized tree in Blender. I hope you liked it and I hope you find this nice. And before you actually move on, you can always change these values. Maybe add some transmission as well. I don't know, you can pretty much add whatever you want to this tree now. This tree is yours. And you can duplicate them and move them around, change whatever you want, and then it's your desire. Whatever you desire, just make it. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Hope you liked it. And if you want to add fireflies, I might add another tutorial on that. I'll see yet. But yeah, thank you for watching and see ya in the next episode if I ever make another one.